Hey guys, we're here from Radiant Clean. Today we're doing a roof wash in Valrico, Florida. So you can tell it's got some dark stains to it. So we're gonna climb up there and take a quick walk around, make sure what everything looks like, and show you some before and after. Yeah, there's some nice staining going on there. All right. This looks like we got some oxidation. I'm not sure if this is gonna be cleanable. But we will take a look. I'll take some before and after. I think some of this is just oxidation. So we'll take a look, see what we can do there. You can see some of the staining on the roof. So take a before and after here. Alright, so these guys have gutters that go into the ground, so a lot of times those leach into the lawn. They don't actually go into the sewer or anything. So what I'm going to do is put some bleach neutralizer in the gutters themselves so that they'll kill their lawn. So since we can't put a gutter bag on it. So I'm just going to do that. We're going to get the hoses pulled. Now let's put some neutralizer crystals in here. Okay. Get these off the roof. Yeah, we're gonna do the same over here. There's another gutter with just a downspout into the ground. So I'm gonna do that over here. You can see some staining right there on the roof. So get all that off. Downspout. There's one over there. One over here. All right, we're gonna get the hoses pulled and we'll go from there. Hey guys, Dante's putting down some initial wet so that the grass doesn't get killed. So we always put down, talking to the camera. We always drench the ground so that we don't get it, it has less likelihood to get burned. We get those roots fully saturated. So, all right, I'm gonna go head up and start on the back while he's doing that. All right, we can start on back here. Most of it runs down into that white area. A little breezy today. That's never fun. Definitely getting bleach blown into your face.
If I didn't mention it before, for this roof, because it's particularly dirty, we're using a 5% mix of sodium hypochlorite and a decent amount of surfactant. Later on, we'll boost that a little bit to about 6% because some of these stains were a little bit more tenacious. But that high of a mix, you can see the color changing pretty quickly. But again, this is a pretty dirty roof, so it needed it.
You can start to see that changing colors already. That white foamy stuff is not necessarily the sodium hypochlorite. We also have surfactant in the mix, which is just basically soap. And that soap helps it stick on the shingles longer. It also helps break down some of the dirt and grime, but primarily it's there for the more adhesive effect. That way we use less chem. Let that trickle down. You can see it, some of it's changing color already. I let it work its way down so that way I'm not just creating too much runoff. Let the stuff work that was up above. That's a good dose. This will get some runoff on it too as well, but they wanted some before and after of this. And you can see that it's changing color already from what it was. So let's start up here. And we're doing this in the morning. We always try to do that here in Florida because once this gets too hot up here, it's not just even about our comfort, although that's part of it, but the roof gets so hot, it just almost instantly evaporates the SH. And we want to give that SH time to work so that it's more effective. We don't have to do too many touch-ups or put on more than one or two coats. And in really hot weather, that just, it takes longer, more coats, because it's just evaporating so quickly. You can actually see it steaming off. And then we also have to wear respirators and stuff like that because you don't want to breathe that stuff in, for sure. Some of that's coming off already on that roof down there. look at the color difference on that already. And you can see, guys, we're not using pressure at all. That is completely unnecessary. Our soft wash system just uses a 12-volt pump, and we're using the chemical to do the work rather than pressure, and that is much better for the roof surface. It's not knocking those granules off there or getting under the surface of the shingle. It's not taking off that protective surface layer, where if someone uses pressure, then they are literally removing that protective layer on your shingles. So that is a no-no. It's definitely not recommended by the roofing industry. Some old-time pressure washers will tell you that it's perfectly fine because they've been doing it that way for years and they haven't ruined any roofs. And I call BS on that one. I guarantee they've ruined roofs. It's just people weren't aware of it. I guarantee that they've reduced the longevity of a roof by doing it that way. So do not let someone use pressure on your roof, even on tile roofs. Those tiles are not that strong, and I've seen people in videos with getting up there with a surface cleaner that we use on driveways and cleaning a tile roof with it, and that is just makes me cringe every time I see something like that. It's faster for sure if they can do that, but you can see I'm not having to lug that up on the roof. We're depending on science, and this will also, because we're treating it with chemical, the sodium hypochlorite will help inhibit future growth, so it's not going to grow back as quickly, so it will last longer than somebody who's just coming up here and blasting your roof with a pressure washer. So go over there a bit better. All right. Dante. Dante. I'm gonna start back there. What? I'm gonna start back there. All right. So the reason I'm telling Dante is where I'm starting is because all of this stuff is flowing into the drains. The stuff here is just going to flow right into the grass. So he's going to be wetting this down while I'm doing it so that we can kind of control some of that overspray. It's not perfect, but he can be watering it down and diluting it while I'm spraying. That's why we're gonna, on this side, try to control the runoff as much as we can. So let some of that stuff work in. Again, you can see that color changing as we're doing this, so. You can see the difference between the colors right there. That's lightening it right up. that is making a big difference, if you can't see that. Get up here.
We get a lot of questions about the amount of bleach that a typical cleaning takes, and it's really all dependent on the size of the roof and just how dirty it is. So you'll see that we end up having to go over a lot of the spots on this roof twice, at least, because it's just so dirty. So it left some residual streaks and stuff like that. So we had to go back, let this dry, go back and hit some of those areas again for a second time. This job took about 30 to 40 gallons of 12% SH. So that's a decent amount, particularly for a house that's not particularly big. We usually use more SH on tile roofs because there's so much more runoff. It doesn't stick as well to the tile. This adheres a little bit more to the shingles, so we can control the runoff a little bit better. But yeah, I think this job took around 30 to 40 gallons.
You can see why we put that crystal in there, because as that runs off into the gutter, it's It's going to neutralize it before it goes into the ground. And that will hopefully save them some headache. They have gutter bags that have the deneutralizer in it. They're really expensive, and you can buy the deneutralizer just on Amazon, so I'm not quite sure why people want the bags, other than maybe put it in the bottom of the gutter, but we haven't found them necessary to date. It's not a bad idea, I guess, if you could find those bags somewhere, like how to make them yourself, but we haven't found it necessary. Alright, you can see all that runoff. So that's all wasted chemical, unfortunately, but partly why cleaning roofs is not inexpensive, because we do end up using a decent amount of sodium hypochlorite. So we're running this mix today because this roof is kind of dirty at about a 5%. So it's a pretty strong mix. Dante, make sure you wet the top of that. All right, I'm gonna start over here. Doing over here. Alright, you can see this is lightening up already. May have to go over this again a little bit in spots. We'll let that sit for a minute, see. But you can tell some of this is dark already. This will continue to lighten as it dries, but since this faces the street, I'm going to give this a hit while I'm at it. Alright guys, we're still watering down, but what I like to do is take some bleach neutralizer and go through and rinse everything down with that, then we'll rinse with water again. So I'll douse this with bleach neutralizer. That will help, but then we're going to rinse that off again with bleach neutralizer. Alright guys, we're going to do a double check here, see if there's anything that needs a second coat. This isn't quite dry yet, so it is still working. Alright guys, this had still some dark streaks on it, so we're giving a couple of spots a touch up. It's pretty dirty, so I'm not surprised. I bumped up the mix to about 6%, just so we don't have to do this again. But you can see where some of these streaks are. those will continue to fade as the sun continues to activate the bleach, but just don't want to leave it looking too streaky, obviously, even though I know those will clean up, but we want to take care of as much of those as possible so we don't get a call back. Which is fine. We always tell our customers that if we, on the off chance that we miss something, to let us know, because the last thing we want to do is have unhappy customers, and you know, sometimes stuff doesn't come off like we want it to, which is normal, but we want to try to avoid having to come back and make that extra trip if we don't need to. But if a customer finds something that maybe we missed or they forgot to tell us about, we're more than happy to come back. That, folks, is how you keep your 5-star rating. Yeah.
What happened?
Walked on the hose.
Oh.
Make sure you get the grass in front of that roof there. Yeah. Alright guys, we're just finishing up on this roof. We ended up having to go over it a couple times, but I'm gonna take in a walk around. It's continuing to fade as the bleach activates. So you can see this is a much cleaner looking roof. You can see a couple little streaks. That yellow color is just the algae dying. And you can see the roof that had a lot of mildew and stuff on it. Those are just runoff from the roof. So you can see it's looking a lot better than it was. So, and like I said, that'll continue to lighten in those areas. So, all right, guys, on to our next job. Another great job from Radiant Clean. And you know, these roof cleanings is more than just about looks. This is gonna extend the life of the roof for 5 to 10 years. So, all right, guys, we'll catch you later. Bye.